We often grumble when a new watch is just a dial change, but in this instance, it's a dial change that we wanted, or at least a dial change that I wanted. This is Tudor's new Black Bay Pro with the Opaline dial. The first Black Bay Pro was launched back in 2022. Arguably the most important watch from Tudor's launch. This is the Black Bay Pro. And it clearly took inspiration from the first Explorer 2, the reference 1655 from Tudor's big brother Rolex. Now the modern Rolex Explorer 2 is very different from the 1655. It's much beefier and it's so much more legible with the clearer, less cluttered dial and bezel. It just looks more modern. But then that opens up a space for a modern version of the 1655. And that's exactly what Tudor did. It's clearly taken inspiration from the 1655, but it's not a direct copy. It's got the hallmarks of Tudor on it. And it's also a lot more robust. Now, of all the Explorer 2s, the white dial version is far more popular than the black dial version. However, the 1655 never had a white dial version, but that doesn't mean Tudor can't do one. The specs of this new version are exactly the same as the original Black Bay Pro, which did get a fair bit of criticism, but we'll touch on that in a bit. The case is stainless steel, it's 39mm wide, it's 14.6mm thick, it's 47mm lug to lug, and it has 20mm lugs. It has a screw down crown, water resistance of 200 meters, a fixed 24-hour bezel, and it has a domed sapphire crystal. The movement inside is Tudor's in-house caliber MT5652, and this is a non-META certified movement. It is cost certified, however. It's automatic, has a GMT function, as you can see by this big yellow hand, and it has 70 hours of power reserve. The price is $3,730 on a bracelet or $3,450 on a strap. Now, the original Black Bay Pro got a lot of criticism for being thick. On paper, it is quite a thick watch at over 14.5mm thick. However, some of that, 2mm of that, is taken up by the domed sapphire crystal. You then also have an angled bezel. So it starts off low on the edge and then goes up as it joins the crystal. And so I'd happily assign 4mm to the crystal and the bezel on its own. That means that in the middle of the watch head, it is going to be 14.6mm thick, but on the edge, it's going to be significantly thinner, closer to 11mm on the edge, which on paper then makes the watch sound a lot thinner than it is, especially when it's compared to the modern Explorer 2, which is 12.5mm, and the Omega Seamaster, which is 12.6mm thick. That being said, both of those watches have sapphire crystal and they also have a bezel. So again, you could shave off a couple of millimeters for both the bezel and the sapphire crystals. If you ignore bezels and sapphire crystals, the watch is still a thick watch, and there's two more challenges around the thickness or the perceived thickness of the Black Bay Pro. Firstly is the fact that the case is very slab-sided. Many watch designs have curves or contours on the edge of the case, and that changes the perception. So a thick watch can be perceived as being a thin watch just with the way the case has been designed. The other point is the fact that the Black Bay Pro is thinner width-wise, but it's taller height-wise. And so the thickness is exaggerated by the fact that it's a smaller watch. The proportions make the thickness feel more pronounced. There is one thing that unites the Black Bay Pro, the Explorer 2, the Seamaster, and that's they all look absolutely fantastic on the one-piece nylon straps that are over at barkandjack.com. There's so many colors there, and you could use the colors to match up with your watches, or you could use the colors to contrast with your watches, or if you're like me, who's absolutely useless with color, I just go with a gray strap. Works with absolutely everything, and it looks killer. Check them out over at barkandjack.com. Now let's get back to the thickness. And all that being said about the thickness of the watch, I really feel like the internet kind of had this big uproar thing around the thickness of the Black Bay Pro when it first came out. It really isn't as big a deal as what people made it out to be. Yes, it's a thick watch, but it's not obscenely thick. It's not unnecessarily thick. It's just thick. I do actually have a conspiracy around Tudor and their case design, but I feel like that's a whole topic on its own, so I'll do a separate video on that. And mentioning other videos, I've actually just shot a video where I compare a whole load of Explorer 2 style watches, so make sure you hit subscribe down there so you don't miss out on that video. As a comparison between the Black Bay Pro Black and the Black Bay Pro Opaline or White, there's I guess two main categories between the two watches. One is a vintage inspired watch and the other watch is a more modern interpretation of a vintage watch. The Black Bay Pro Black is heavily vintage inspired. We have Fotino, we've got a beige minute track. We've then got this vintage font on the bezel, and then of course the faux rivet bracelet. The Opaline dial one, however, yes, we still have the same font around the bezel and we still have the faux rivet bracelet. But the matte white dial with the matte black markers and matte black hands really give it this modern touch. The fact that there isn't any Fotino on this watch really allows it to feel much more modern. That isn't to say anything negative around the black dial version. I just feel like they're just two different packages based on the same watch. One thing that stood out to me, and it could just be my eyes, I saw this with previous Tudors, is that it looks like the steel within the white dial version is brighter than the steel on the black dial version. I noticed this when Tudor launched the Black Bay 58 Blue. When I compared that to the Black Bay 58 Black, the blue dial version had lighter steel, the black dial version had darker steel. It could just be my eyes being weird, but side by side, the white dial version definitely has brighter steel. I think overall this launch is an awesome launch, and I do appreciate that my view of this is biased. My favorite line within Rolex is the Explorer line. I'm wearing my Explorer 2 today. And so naturally something that looks like an Explorer 2, I'm going to enjoy it. I love the adventurous feel of this watch. It feels like it wants to go explore somewhere. I love how high contrast the dial is. I'm a sucker for a white dial watch anyway, but I love the white dial along with the matte black indices and hands. And then of course with the added GMT function, I feel like this watch just ticks so many of my boxes. And if I didn't have the cash for an Explorer 2, or I wanted a more vintage version of the Explorer 2 and didn't have the cash for the crazy prices that those things go for, this would absolutely fit the bill. And it is, of course, I mean, it's impossible to compare a modern made watch to a very vintage watch, but of course it's so much better built than the vintage watches. There are a few things that I would have changed about this watch. I'll start off with the 24-hour hand, the GMT hand. It's quite a light or washed out yellow. When against the black dial, that looks absolutely fantastic and very easily legible. On the white dial, it just feels a bit, well, washed out. It would have been better to have either a dark yellow or more orange, or just something that has a bit more contrast with the light dial in the background. Talking about the dial, I would have liked it to be a true white rather than this opaline kind of silvery white. I just want this plain matte white dial. That would have been absolutely fantastic. Lastly, it's the movement. This is an adventurous watch, a purposeful watch. It's designed to do stuff, to go places. And it would have been great for them to have that META certified movement inside. Tudor can make META certified movements. If you're not familiar, COSC does the accuracy. So COSC certified movements mean that they're certified highly accurate. And then META does basically the robustness. So it checks for how the movement performs under magnetism, how it performs with shock or temperature changes. And so it means that the META certified movement is legitimately strong and can handle adventurous stuff. It would have been great for Tudor to put their META certified movement in this watch so it can do even more stuff. But I understand why they didn't, because it would have just been such a headache. The fact that the Black Bay Pro Black is already out there, you couldn't have one watch that is the same name, the same line, and have another watch that has a superior movement. It just wouldn't make sense. It just would have been good to have it. Guys, I want to know your thoughts on this new Black Bay Pro. Have you got hands on with it? Now that kind of the dust has settled around the whole thickness thing that people got hooked up on, do you agree that it's thick, but it's not an issue level thickness? Drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you do subscribe, because I've got a whole video dedicated to these 4 Explorer 2 style watches at 4 different price points. And it's quite interesting seeing who's pushing out what. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you like the style of this video, then hit the subscribe button down there and that little bell icon to get notifications when I drop a new video. If you're on Instagram, give me a follow at BarkandJack. And if you want to check out the watch straps and watch accessories and mugs, jump over to barkandjack.com. See you guys soon. Take care.